My name is Ella Grace Whitmore. I'm 68 years old, and for nearly 50 years I was a wife, a mother, and the steady heartbeat of Hazelbrook Orchards, a small organic apple farm nestled among Pennsylvania's rolling hills. Though arthritis stiffens my hands now, I still remember every step: kneading bread for sourdough loaves, pruning trees at dawn alongside Richard, my husband. 3 weeks ago I laid Richard to rest. We had been married since 1981, building everything together. This orchard, this home, this family. Yet, the morning after his funeral, I realized that what I thought I had built might not have been enough. Or perhaps, it wasn't enough to keep my children close. Richard succumbed to pancreatic cancer, wasting away over 14 months, his strength slowly stolen. He never wanted the children to see him that way, to carry the shadow of illness. One night, with a voice thick from morphine, he whispered to me, asking me to shield them. Because I loved him, I agreed. But deep down I already knew. Darren and Samantha had drifted long before the diagnosis. Darren, the eldest, had carved out a fast-paced career in Boston's financial district, rarely returning home in over 10 years. Samantha, meanwhile, floated from one wellness startup to another, constantly borrowing from Richard's savings, always chasing the next venture. I'd hoped grief might bring them back, that they'd remember the orchard, the laughter around family dinners, the love that made this house a home. But when they arrived for the funeral, I saw not children mourning, but professionals calculating the estate. That night, alone in the kitchen, I stared at the worn wood of our dining table. I told them we'd sort through Richard's belongings the next day. A small gesture, a mother's way of making space for memory. But they had other plans. The next morning, sunlight spilled through lace curtains Richard and I had chosen 30 years ago. I brewed simple coffee, Richard's favorite, not Darren's imported blend, and waited. They came downstairs dressed sharply. Darren in a blazer, Samantha in a silk blouse with perfectly curled hair, as if heading to a meeting, not gathering to remember their father. "Mom," Darren said, placing his coffee with practiced precision, "we've been talking." His voice was calm, businesslike. "It's time to settle the estate, the house, the orchard." I blinked, unsure I'd heard right. Settle. As if the life Richard and I built was just a number on a ledger. "It's practical," Darren continued. "You can't manage the orchard or the house alone. It's too much at your age." My age. The words hung heavy. I had pruned those trees through blizzards and heat waves. I'd handled payroll when we couldn't afford help, baked pies for fundraisers, driven tractors, delivered crates to food banks. This was my life. Samantha added softly, "We want you to be comfortable. There's a wonderful retirement community, Sunnyvale Estates, just 2 hours south. Activities, friends your age." I stood, needing to move to hide the trembling in my hands. Then Darren pulled out a folder. "Dad spoke to me about this last year," he said, sliding some documents toward me. "He wanted Melissa and me to take over." I looked at the papers, printed on Darren's corporate letterhead, the signature steady but too perfect, clearly not from Richard's hand in months. "This isn't from our family lawyer," I said. Richard was lucid when he signed it. Darren insisted. He wanted this. It's what he wanted. Samantha nodded quickly. "A fresh start. There's a developer interested, $7 million for the land. We'd be set. You'd be cared for." They wanted to sell the orchard, erase the lifetime of harvests, the sustainability, the giving back, replaced by concrete and cul-de-sacs. I quietly said, "You're talking about selling your father's life's work." "Mom," Darren pressed, "be reasonable. The orchard can't last forever. It's time to let go." A slow burn of fury stirred within me, recalling the days I spent tending those trees, fighting off storms, caring for the land that was more than just soil. I looked at both of my children and with calm steadiness I demanded, "Show me the will." Darren hesitated but then pushed it toward me. I didn't touch it. "I'm going to bed," I said. "We'll talk tomorrow." But I knew there would be no tomorrow. They weren't grieving. They were executing a plan. That night, I lay awake in the bed Richard and I had shared for decades, listening to the creaks of the farmhouse and the wind rustling the apple trees outside. Every sound was familiar. It was the silence from my children's hearts that felt foreign. By morning, the smell of coffee drifted through the house. Sharp, bitter, imported, Darren's kind. I moved slowly, joints aching from more than age, betrayal. When I descended, they were already packed, coats on, suitcase in hand. The suitcase wasn't mine. We packed some essentials, Samantha said brightly. We thought we could drive you to Sunnyvale today. Just to look. You don't have to decide yet. I'm not going to a retirement community, I replied, pouring my coffee. Darren checked his watch. Mom, the paperwork is done. We close with the developers next week. You can't stay here. This is my home, I said softly. It's all of ours. Darren's voice was flat. Dad left the business to us. It's time to let go. I stared at him, seeing not the boy who once asked about bees and frost but a stranger. A man who saw me as a liability to be managed. I need my medication, I said, stepping away. And I want to get some family photos. Samantha nodded, relieved. Take what you want. We'll ship the rest. Upstairs I didn't cry. I gathered my pills and, secretly, something they didn't know I kept hidden. A passport, a birth certificate, and a small fireproof box containing the original deed to 20 acres of land purchased before my marriage, land with water rights, land vital for any future I might carve out. When I returned downstairs, my purse felt heavier but my heart lighter. Ready? Darren asked. Sure, I said, allowing Samantha to take my arm. I let them believe I was defeated. We drove past the fields just beginning to bloom, past the elementary school where I volunteered, past the library where I read to children. Instead of heading toward Sunnyvale, Darren veered onto a remote county road. 20 minutes later, he pulled onto a gravel shoulder beside an empty field. This is where you get off, Mom, he said casually. The house and orchard are ours now. Samantha's smile faded. Darren, what? She'll contest the will, cause scenes. This is cleaner. She has clothes, her meds. There's a gas station 5 miles up, he replied, opening my door. Just like that, they left me on the side of the road, with nothing. Or so they thought. The car disappeared down the dusty road, kicking up a cloud of grime and leaving behind a scent of betrayal. I stood rooted in place, the wind tugging at my coat, clutching the small suitcase they had packed for me. Yet I felt no fear. No despair. Instead, a quiet sense of liberation washed over me. I was free. With deliberate steps, I began to walk, not toward the gas station Darren so kindly mentioned, but toward town, toward whatever lay ahead. My flats weren't made for gravel, and the early spring sun already warmed the back of my neck, but each step strengthened my resolve. I had everything I needed in my purse. My ID, my passport, my medication, and most crucially, the original deed to 20 acres of prime orchard land. Land Darren and Samantha had no idea about. Land I'd purchased in my maiden name long before Richard and I married. A safety net, he called it. Now it was my lifeline. That land wasn't just dirt and trees. It held the only natural water source on the entire property. Without it, no irrigation, no orchard, no future development. My children thought they'd cornered me, but they didn't understand what truly lay beneath their feet. They didn't grasp the weight of legacy, of roots that ran deep. I did. After nearly 2 hours of walking, my feet blistered and aching, I finally reached the edge of Hazelbrook. There, the familiar sight of Miller's Gas and Grocery greeted me. Small, old-fashioned, unchanged by time. A place where people still called each other by name and paid in cash. I sat on the bench outside watching cars come and go. I looked like just a tired old woman with a suitcase, but I carried something far more powerful than they realized. The truth. Ray Miller stepped out from behind the counter, wiping his hands on his apron. We'd known each other for over 30 years. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, concern creasing his brow. Are you all right? You look pale. Just resting, I replied softly. It's been a long day. He eyed the suitcase beside me, then looked at me with genuine worry. Sorry about Richard. He was a good man. Yes, I nodded. He was. He hesitated, then asked gently, do you need to use the phone? It's not a bother. He led me inside, past shelves of canned peaches and discounted cereal, to a small office in the back. I dialed from memory. Our family lawyer, Harold Jennings. Naomi, he answered promptly, sounding surprised. I've been trying to reach you. I expected you at the will reading. My grip tightened on the receiver. What reading? There was a will. There was a pause. Darren presented a will. I had concerns. It doesn't match the updated file Richard and I worked on last year. I need your help. Please, discreetly. I understand, I said, voice steady. My office in an hour. I ended the call and turned to Ray. Do you sell prepaid phones? He nodded. A few customers want them. Why? I'd like one and a bottle of water. And don't take my money, I added quietly. Mrs. Whitmore, you just say the word, he replied kindly. His kindness nearly unraveled me, but I refused to show tears. Not when I'd buried Richard, and not now. I had work to do. Harold Jennings's office was on the second floor of an old Victorian house on Main Street, right across from the library. He'd been our lawyer for over 30 years, the kind of man who wore sweater vests without irony and believed in a firm handshake. His secretary Helen looked up as I entered. Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Jennings is expecting you. Would you like some water or coffee? I'm fine, thank you, I said. Harold greeted me at the door, his face still sharp, though a little more stooped since I last saw him. Naomi, he said, leading me to a pair of leather chairs by the window, tell me everything. And so I did. About the funeral, the fake will, the tense kitchen discussions, the roadside abandonment, every detail. He listened without interruption, his face growing darker with each revelation. When I finally reached into my purse, I retrieved the fireproof box holding the original deed to the 20 acres Richard and I had quietly set aside decades ago. I passed it to Harold. This, I said simply, is gold. Not just land but leverage. With the water rights and zoning, this is what they can't touch without my consent. Harold examined the deed with reverence. This is invaluable. It's not just land, it's a safeguard. He hesitated, then looked up. This appears to be a forgery. The signature looks too smooth, almost too perfect, especially for someone under hospice care. I suspected as much. Then we challenge it, I said firmly. Harold nodded. But that takes time. In the meantime, we have this. He held up the deed. You still hold legal ownership of the most critical part of the land. They can't proceed without your approval. I want my home back, I whispered. And I want them to understand what they've done. Then we'll make sure they do, Harold promised. He drafted a letter to the developer, warning them that the property wasn't what they'd been led to believe. If they had any sense, they'd back out. Developers hate lawsuits and incomplete land rights. He also knew a judge in district court. We can get a motion filed to freeze the sale until this is resolved, he said. I gazed out the window at the bustling street, a quiet storm brewing in this small office. I don't want revenge, I whispered more to myself than to him. I want truth and peace. You'll have both, Harold assured me. Starting now. By noon the next day, Harold had filed an emergency injunction to halt any transfer of ownership. A courier delivered the legal notice directly to the development firm Darren and Samantha had been dealing with. Within hours, the deal was suspended. The developers, facing unexpected legal hurdles and the revelation that a key portion of the land with the vital water source was owned separately and undisclosed, began to backpedal. Their lawyers reached out urgently, seeking clarification. I told them the truth, Harold explained as we reviewed the documents. The land is incomplete. The water rights aren't transferable, and your clients don't have the authority they claimed. That evening my phone buzzed. A message from Samantha, her first since they left me stranded on the roadside. Mom, please call me. We need to talk. Darren's freaking out. We didn't know about that other land. Can we just fix this? I stared at the words, feeling the weight of their panic. No apology, no acknowledgement of their betrayal, just desperate attempts to hold on to the money slipping away. I didn't reply. Later that night, Darren called Harold directly, demanding explanations, trying to regain control. Harold's response was calm but firm. All matters now had to go through legal channels. And so, the battle for Hazelbrook Orchard was only just beginning. Harold said quietly that they had miscalculated badly. They thought I had nothing left. I replied with steady conviction that I had everything they'd forgotten to value. He looked at me with a quiet pride. You're handling this with grace, Eleanor. Many would have gone straight to scorched earth by now. I offered a small, knowing smile. I've lived too long with kindness in my bones to turn bitter now. But I won't be silent either. Outside, Hazelbrook carried on with its simple rhythm. Kids riding bikes, a dog barking in the distance, someone mowing their lawn. Life here was still honest, still straightforward, and I intended to keep it that way. The land wouldn't be sold, not now, not like this. The orchard Richard built, the legacy he left, these weren't commodities. They were home. And I wasn't finished protecting them. In the weeks that followed, I didn't return to the old farmhouse. Instead, I rented a modest apartment above the bakery on Main Street. It had a small balcony, just enough for a rocking chair and a few potted herbs. The smell of cinnamon and fresh bread greeted me each morning. It wasn't the place Richard and I had built together, but it was mine, and that mattered. I started teaching again. On Wednesday nights, I'd quilt at the community center like I used to. I also began hosting weekend workshops at the library, sharing what I knew about organic gardening and sustainable fruit farming. Teenagers, retirees, young couples dreaming of their own farms. They all came. People listened not because I raised my voice but because I spoke with history in my hands. I donated the water rights, securely held in trust, to the Hazelbrook Agricultural Cooperative, a local initiative supporting young farmers. They'd use it, care for the land just as Richard did. That was the future I envisioned. Darren and Samantha kept their distance, but I heard whispers. About the developer pulling out, about the fake deed being challenged and frozen, about their reputations taking hits in their cities. I didn't gloat. I didn't need revenge to make my voice heard. I chose peace, but not at the expense of truth. The orchard remained untouched, blooming softly each spring. Every time I passed by it on my walks, I smiled, not with bitterness, but with the quiet strength of a woman who had reclaimed her land, and her voice. They had underestimated me, but I had finally remembered who I was. I often think back to that moment on the gravel road. The day I stood alone, suitcase in hand, watching my children drive away without a glance. It should have broken me. But it didn't. Because in that silence, I finally heard the truth I'd ignored for years. Love is not loyalty without question. Being a mother doesn't mean tolerating betrayal. They believed they could erase me because I was older, grieving, alone. They thought I'd give up everything and stay silent. But they forgot something important. Before I was a wife, a mother, or a widow, I was Eleanor Grace. A woman who built something with her hands, her heart, her mind. And I never needed to scream to be strong. What they saw as weakness, my silence, my trust, my love, was actually the very power that protected me. If you're listening and you've ever been cast aside, underestimated, or treated like a footnote in your own life, hear this. Your strength isn't in how loudly you fight. It's in how steadfast you are in what you believe. And when you stand your ground, quietly, firmly, it echoes louder than any betrayal. My orchard still stands. My name is still on the deed. My life is mine again. To anyone told to get off, I say, walk if you must. But don't leave your worth behind. Walk with purpose. Walk with quiet power. And when you're ready, tell your story. It just might save someone else. If this story moved you, please like, share, and leave a comment below. And if you've ever been underestimated and found your strength, share your story because it matters.